twisted, and murderous Ernie deserves more love and a live-action adaptation. Here's why. The undead, psychotic mass murderer Ernie, or Evil Ernie, needs no introduction. His villainous nature would make people see him as an antagonist, but since he is the titular character of the comics, he is, in fact, the protagonist. He was created by writer Brian Pulido and artist Steven Hughes, making his debut in 1991 under Eternity Comics' Evil Ernie #1. However, Evil Ernie switches hands several times when it comes to its publisher. After Eternity Comics, it went under Chaos Comics in 1993, then to Devil's Due Publishing in 2005. Currently, Dynamite Entertainment publishes Evil Ernie. Evil Ernie has a cult-like following. Originally, he had the power to draw sequences which would come to life. Initially, his life was good. However, when his father slipped into alcoholism and turned severely abusive, and to make matters worse, his mother also turned abusive after her miscarriage. His father even killed Smiley, his pet rat. Ernie's parents took him to Dr. Price to cure him of his powers. During this process, he met Lady Death, a woman who offered to give him the love he had never received from anyone. Ernie pretended to be cured and went back home. The very next day, he killed his family and 35 other people. He was taken to an asylum where he was treated with a device called the neurotech. It could alter people's minds. During the procedure, Lady Death created a telepathic link with Ernie. The nurse gave Ernie a badge with a smiley on it, and Lady Death used it to link Ernie with her arcane energy. The device exploded, and Ernie became an evil, undead monster that went on to wear the moniker of Evil Ernie. However, in 2012, Ernie's origin story got a reboot. 6 issues were released under the Origin of Evil headline. The new story saw Ernie selling his soul to the devil. He has an abusive father here as well, though it is now his foster father, and Ernie partakes in a ritual where he kills 606 people he considered to be evil, with his father being his last victim. Of course, Smiley is at the helm of it all. The story mainly highlights the battle between good and evil, heaven and hell is trying to create an army of young, evil men to strengthen itself. Before diving into the content, we would like to make a very small request to our viewers. Please subscribe to Marvelous Videos, like and comment on our videos, and press the bell icon to be notified whenever we upload a video. We would be grateful to you, and we hope to bring you the best nerdy content. And with that, let's get right into this video. Evil Ernie, Dynamite 1, Origin of Evil Part 1. Hell begins its fight against heaven. The comic opens with a flashback sequence in 1993. A man drives his wife to the hospital as she is in labor. His son is worried about his mother's safety, but the father reassures the child. A smiley badge can be seen on the man, which becomes super important as the plot progresses. Something takes over the father, and he runs a man over and claims that the man beneath is dead. He crashes the car into a wall and causes an accident that kills everyone, apparently. Meanwhile, the narration talks about an eternal conflict between the duality of things. It talks about how good and evil, heaven and hell, and God and the devil have always been in conflict. When the good souls die, they go to heaven, while the bad souls go to hell. However, the good die early, which keeps heaven more powerful than hell. However, things were soon about to change. 13 years passed by. In 2006, a 13-year-old boy in a leather jacket and the smiley badge from the accident goes to Widmark Security Prison. His name is Ernest Fairchild, or Ernie. He was the boy in the womb from the night of the car accident. At the prison, he asks to see his foster father, Buford King. It is evident from the start that the two of them hate each other. On seeing him, Ernie attacks him with a knife, almost killing him, until he is restrained by the police. A journalist writes a report on the incident, and we find out that Ernie has already killed 665 people prior to this. He is about to be executed under a death penalty for being a mass murderer. Ernie had claimed that the button in his jacket spoke to him, and that it was the one that carried out all the orders to kill and all the parts of the planning. Apparently, the button has made him sell his soul to the devil. Ernie is made to sit in a chair to be electrocuted to death, while an older man nearby keeps praying to God. Buford appears in his execution as a witness and does not hide his hatred for the boy. Meanwhile, another man in a suit appears. The panel switches to Ernie's point of view, and we see the word pedophile marked on the man's forehead. Meanwhile, his doctor is reluctant about killing him. Ernie sees the world as evil. Not everyone is evil, but he believes that the people he had killed were evil. In his eyes, these people look like demons from hell, and he desperately wants to kill Buford. Ernie is electrocuted, but a huge green light bursts out of the building and reaches the sky. Ernie appears undead, with green glowing eyes and a glowing heart. He talks about killing Buford once again, as that would complete his 666th kill, the number of the devil. As he is revived with demonic powers, the sinister yellow Smiley badge takes center stage. Dynamite 2, Origin of Evil, Part 2. Evil Ernie only kills the evil. The comic opens with a flashback sequence from 10 years ago. A 3-year-old Ernie tells his foster father Buford that he was cold. Meanwhile, Buford was too busy with a woman, and he brought out her hot curling iron to make Ernie's body warm. Back in the present, a satanic Ernie mocks Buford with the same sentence about making him warm. He kills one of the cops with the smiley. When people outside try to restrain him, he sees all of them with their sins imprinted on their forehead. As he realizes that these are not good people, he kills all of them with his new powers. However, the smiley warns him not to use his powers too much. Meanwhile, the lady doctor is shocked to see Ernie behave so shockingly. A religious man keeps Buford. He seems to be in a bad place. The smiley reveals why Ernie is the way he is. 5 years ago, he had started a ritual where he would kill 666 sinners of his choice. Buford is the last one, and killing him will give Ernie his new powers permanently. As of now, he can't waste too much of it as he may run out of it. Buford kills one of the cops as they plan to sacrifice him to stop Ernie. Buford also notices how Ernie has a soft spot for the doctor and decides to exploit it. Meanwhile, several cops point their laser guns toward Ernie, and he is forced to use his powers to fight them off. He sees another man, but lets him go as he believes that he is a good person. The journalist from before tries to interview him, but when Ernie sees her as a treacherous person, he kills her. He goes to find Buford, but finds him and the doctor missing. He kills the guy who he recognizes as the pedophile from before. The religious man is seen in church. Mysterious light hits him from somewhere, and he is knocked out. Ernie finds Buford, but sees him holding the doctor as a hostage. Meanwhile, other men gang up on him, and Ernie realizes that his powers have gone. Dynamite 3, Origin of Evil, Part 3, The Devil's Muse. Like its predecessor, Part 3 also opens with a flashback. This is 5 years ago. However, a hospitalized Ernie speaks to the doctor and tells her about how his abusive father is the responsible one for his condition. He also reveals that when he meets someone, he can tell whether they are evil or not, and according to him, the doctor was a good person. In the present, an out-of-juice Ernie fights the opposition with a machine gun. He can't really die, so it's still a win-win situation for him. Buford mocks him and points out how Ernie had spent a generous portion of his childhood praying to God, so his demonic behavior was unexpected for him. He gets the others to restrain him while using a saw to cut off one of his arms. Buford wants Ernie's powers and decides to blackmail him to find out information. He puts the doctor's life on the line and asks for the ritual that made him the way he is. The psychotic button tells him that he was the one who brokered the deal and explains the 666 killings situation. He then gives Buford an offer to eat Ernie's heart, and he will then transfer his powers to him, as all the button apparently only cared about the completion of the ritual. When Buford tries to do so, the button takes away Buford's arm. Buford takes the doctor away as he forces her to hold onto his arm. Meanwhile, the button goes on a rampage, killing people. He eats the heart of one of the people and gains total control over his body. Suddenly, a man appears with a cross on his chest. It's the religious man who was knocked out in the church by a mysterious light. The light was from the archangel Uriel, the angel responsible for leading mortals to their destiny. He asks Ernie to stop, and tells him that his destiny was supposed to be something else, one where his original family did not die. Ernie shows his contempt towards God for never listening to his prayers and wants to focus on saving the doctor and killing Buford. The Archangel tells him that he was supposed to be one of heaven's warriors and tries to have a conversation with him when the Smiley takes over another body and kills the man whose body housed the angel. Dynamite 4, Origin of Evil, Part 4. Man puts the devil to shame. In a 5-year-old flashback sequence, we see Ernie being treated unfairly by the inmates of his prison. Meanwhile, a man tells him how it is not his work to determine whether someone is evil or not. In the present, Ernie shows contempt over Smiley killing off the angel, as he wanted to know more about his own destiny. He goes against Smiley for killing the good guys, as it happens to be against his morals. The Smiley takes out his frustration over God for never listening to him. He then gives Ernie a new arm, which attaches itself to his demonic body. Meanwhile, several other people get possessed by the spirits. Buford goes back to Widmark Security Prison with the doctor as his hostage. He kills one of the cops and releases all the other prisoners, all of whom had grievances against Ernie. The doctor attacks Buford with Ernie's severed arm, but he shoots her in the leg and beats her up. He then forces her to attach that limb to his body, and magically, it works out, even when it shouldn't have. The inmates find Ernie and attack him. The Smiley tries to pump him up in the fight, but without his powers, Ernie finds himself in a tough spot. At the same time, the politicians of the city are deciding what kind of bomb strikes they should use to kill Ernie. Ernie fights the inmates, but he loses his contact with the Smiley badge. Before he can get it back, he feels his limbs leaving his body. At the same time, a cop appears as the new host of Archangel Uriel. At the prison, Buford's body responds to Ernie's arm, and it glows with the same green light as Ernie's had. His arms get amped up with the demonic power. He grabs the doctor by his arm to threaten Ernie. Dynamite 5, The Origin of Evil, Part 5. Ernie finds an army. In a flashback sequence, Ernie is seen praying to God. He prays for a family similar to the ones on television instead of his abusive one. Years go by, and his prayers become more violent. What started off as him praying for hope turns into him pleading God to punish his abusers. Until 2007, when he begins to pray to Lucifer. He sits in his room with a pentagram drawn around him. This is probably not long before he sold his soul to the devil. In the present, Buford's body has changed completely. He glows green and is super powerful, while Ernie is in a horribly battered shape. It's appalling how Buford is actually so much stronger than Ernie here. Without the psychotic Smiley, Ernie is depowered. Buford tries to kill the doctor, but Ernie jumps to save her. This breaks his body into two halves, making Buford gleam with malicious joy. He pins Ernie down and asks him whether his attempt at revenge was worth all the innocent lives that were lost. Ernie says no. Meanwhile, the politicians and government officials discuss a course of action to stop Ernie. They plan to nuke the place with a bomb that is sure to kill him and cause minimal collateral. The farmers nearby have been evacuated to prevent the deaths of civilians, so apart from environmental damage, there's not a lot that is stopping them from nuking Ernie. However, the president finds himself in a tough spot while trying to make the decision. Archangel Uriel tries to stop him, but Buford kills him. All that is left of Ernie are parts of his skeleton and his blood. The doctor looks up at the sky and starts crying and expresses out her grievances to God. She blames God for letting all the people die today, good and bad alike. She blames him for never doing anything, despite having people under his watch. She talks about how Ernie prayed to him and believed in him for years, but he never listened to him. Buford appears and licks the doctor with his demonic tongue. He then takes her with him, with the intent of physically assaulting her. Ernie hears this and begins to gleam. His body is assorted once again, and he comes back to life with the Smiley on his jacket. The Smiley is appalled, but Ernie claims how he feels even better than before. In fact, this time he can feel dead people. A horde of dead people awaken, zombified. Together, they go towards Buford, who is shocked to see Ernie with this army. Dynamite 6, The Origin of Evil Part 6. Bye Bye Buford. A not so old flashback sequence shows Ernie with a blonde girl named Eunice. Ernie picks up a huge can of poison at the Lucretia water distillery plant, which he had originally used to poison the water and kill several people. He tells Eunice that he is going to kill people. She doesn't believe him at first and thinks he's joking. That is until he runs the car over her. This is where Ernie's journey begins, as he kills immoral people early to strengthen Hell's army in its fight against heaven. In the present, the Smiley applauds Ernie for tapping into his potential by raising an army of the dead. They head to save the doctor, but Ernie tells Smiley that he will not kill Buford. Smiley is shocked because they needed to kill Buford to complete the ritual, as he was Ernie's 666th target. He saves the doctor and claims that all he wants is for her to live. Meanwhile, Buford gets even stronger and his appearance begins to resemble the devil with huge horns. Ernie asks Smiley how Buford was so much stronger than him. Smiley explains that it is because Buford is extremely evil and how without the Smiley badge, Ernie would be toast by now. Meanwhile, the Archangel Uriel possesses the president's body, prompting him to make a decision about the nuke. Ernie fights Buford and is severely outmatched in strength. Buford rips his arm away and finds a cowboy hat, which he dons. The moment Buford wears the hat, Ernie feels it in his own body. He changes his mind about not killing Buford. Aware of the fact that he can control others with powers similar to his, he makes Buford rip his own heart out and forces him to eat it. With his 666th kill, the ritual comes to an end. He tries to leave with the doctor when choppers flying overhead nuke them. Both of them die, but of course, Ernie comes back to life. He finds the doctor to be dead. Heartbroken at the state of affairs, he leaves the place with Smiley to carry out the devil's work. Here's why Evil Ernie totally deserves a live-action adaptation. Evil Ernie enjoys a cult following in the world of fictional horror comics. However, with the live-action industry reigning over every form of entertainment at this point, Evil Ernie definitely deserves his own live-action adaptation. Evil Ernie was originally created to be a screenplay, so it is only natural for it to get a live-action adaptation. The only problem is, Dynamite Comics owns Evil Ernie, while writer Brian Pulido owns Lady Death, so it might not be possible to get an adaptation of Evil Ernie's origin story. This is where the reboot comes into play, as it does not feature Lady Death. It can be adapted without the need for too many legalities. Today, the VFX and CGI are good enough to pull off the gory action in the story. Of course, the movie would have to be R-rated. You cannot have kids seeing a bloodied guy with a heart shining through his ribcage, can you? What did you think of Evil Ernie with his rage unleashed? Did you enjoy this video? If yes, then don't forget to like and comment on the video. Till then, goodbye and have a nice one.